Hey guys, Eric here, and today we are going to be reading Fire and Frost by Alicia Rage, Chapter 7. Sorry, my dress is falling down. Happened to my handy dandy bookmark. Okay, Chapter 7. Now that Teddy was here, Mom and I couldn't continue our conversation in case he overheard. It was only about 1 o'clock, so we had plenty of time to kill before he took us out to dinner. When I walked into my bedroom, I understood completely why my mother wanted me home early. I really needed to do some chores and clean my room. Sorry, I have a bag on my stand / ring light, and it's bothering me. It's like swinging around in the wind, air, the wind. My bedroom was my place of solace. The walls were white since I painted over the pale yellow a few years ago. I'd added a wall decal beside my bed of 2 colorful owls sitting on a branch together. There was other owl decor spread throughout the room, and it was utterly a mess. Clothes, both clean and dirty, were strewn around along with pieces of homework books and other crap I hadn't realized I had even used recently. I started with my stuffed animal owl collection in the corner, straightening their wings and setting them upright on their shelves. I took special care of the gray one I called Luna, the one my father had given to me that had started the collection. I set her next to the larger black one I'd named David after my father. My collection brought me back to the memory of my father's death. He used to be a math teacher at the middle school. The night was parent-teacher conference, which meant he was working late. Perhaps if he wasn't out so late, he wouldn't have been hit by a drunk driver. I doubted my father even saw him coming before the full-size pickup truck hit him head-on. Maybe if I'd said something about my dream, we could have warned him. The thought only wounded my heart further. If I knew there was nothing I knew there was nothing I could do to change what had happened nearly a decade ago. I forced down the lump in my throat when all of my owls were in order. I turned back to the rest of my room and prepared myself to tackle it. I slowly organized piles of clothes and other random belongings, and then walked down to the basement to do my laundry, all while trying to sort through the overwhelming information I'd stumbled upon. I was psychic. I was really psychic. How powerful were my abilities? What could I do? What would Emma say when she found out? How would I tell her? Why? Why would I tell her? Would I tell her? Why was it so easy for me to believe in this nonsense? Was it nonsense? So many questions raced through my head. I let my clothes sit next to me in the basket as I took a seat on top of the jar. I folded my legs and rested my hands on my knees. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. How do I use my abilities? I tried focusing on my breathing to relax myself, but it didn't work. I thought maybe if I focused, I would be able to see something, maybe even see Olivia again, to find out what she needed, but nothing came. There was still too much confusion clouding my mind. What good is being psychic if I can't see things at will? I thought as I hopped down, annoyed, and threw my clothes in the washer, not bothering to separate the whites from the colors. When I went back up to my room, I suddenly lost all forms of motivation I'd had from earlier. Although my room was only half clean, I fell down on my bed, intending to sort out the thoughts in my head. Moments later, my mother was knocking at the door. She peeked her head into my room and frowned at the mess, but didn't say anything. Crystal, it's time to get ready to go. Go? Go where? I glanced at the clock on my nightstand. Holy crap, I'd fallen asleep for nearly 3 hours. Where had the time gone? Teddy wants you to dress nice. Oh my god. My mother closed the door quietly, and I got ready to go out. I put the sundress with blue flowers, which seemed to be the nicest thing in my closet. I let my hair fall down around my body and slipped on a pair of fancy sandals. I applied mascara as a final touch. Don't you have anything to wear? Teddy asked when he saw me. Oh, don't you have anything nicer to wear? Teddy asked when he saw me. I looked down at my dress. I thought it looked fine. Nicer? He laughed. I'm just kidding, kiddo. I think you look great. My mother came out a few minutes later, looking as gorgeous as ever in a blue halter dress that showed off her slim figure. She had twisted up her hair and applied some makeup. I could tell she hated it. Why so fancy? Teddy rose from his chair and held out his elbow for her. He was wearing sleek black pants, a button-down shirt, and a tie. Why is he doing this? I wondered. He said this wasn't a special occasion. Before I could finish the thought, I knew exactly what the special occasion was. I knew it just a minute ago whenever he said dance fancy. Dress nice. Teddy didn't bother telling us where we were going, but it didn't surprise me when we reached the city and stopped in front of a mant. My mother clearly had no idea what was going on as Teddy led her through the front doors. Why so fancy? She asked again. Please, Mom, I thought. If you're sidekick, how can you not see what's happening? Teddy shrugged. I just thought we could use a nice meal. He gave my mother a peck on the lips before turning to talk to the host about our reservations. I got the impression that Teddy had this plan for quite some time, but was still trying desperately to keep things casual. It wasn't working so well for him. The host led us through the restaurant to an elegant table set with a romantic blossom centerpiece. We took our seats and ordered drinks. Before searching over the menu, how could my mother not see what was going on? Especially with these prices. Steak and fries for $30. It better be a pretty good steak, I thought. I decided to order some salmon the same time our drinks arrived. I silently sipped on my lemon water while Mom and Teddy chatted about the menu. I was thinking about the lobster, my mother announced. I was thinking the same thing. Maybe I should order something else, and we can share, Teddy offered. My mother gazed at him and smiled. They oogled at each other from across the table for what seemed like forever, before finally deciding on what to order. I tried not to blush with their obvious flirting. We ordered our dinner and talked about the trivial matters while we waited. Teddy was a great guy, but he could get a bit dull at sometimes, so I tuned him out. I let my mind wander, again exploring the implications of my abilities. While trying to sort through all the questions I still had, I thought of Olivia again. What did she need help with? When our food came, Teddy finally quieted. I sat in peace, listening to the tranquil music in the background and savoring my delicious fish. I watched as Teddy and my mom shared food, actually feeding each other. My first instinct was to gag, but then I reminded myself why I was here. I smiled, wondering when the excitement of the night would climax. This was a memory I sure wanted to hold on to. So instead of letting my mind wander, I focused on the couple before me, so happy and in love. As the food of our plates began to disappear, our mouths started moving more. When my mother asked about Teddy's parents in Florida, he set up his speech far too well. He took advantage of this. I'm glad you asked, because the same time I talked to them, they were suggesting we go down there Thanksgiving, their treat. My mom's face twisted as if she didn't know how to answer the question. I thought it was a great idea. We didn't have family in the area. The only reason we lived in Payne Springs was because my parents moved here to partner with Sophie and Diane on their business. Sophie was the only one with family in the area, and out of the three of them, Teddy had family nearby too. I'd met most of them, but his parents retired to Florida and traveled the tropics most holidays. We still hadn't had a chance to meet them, so it only made sense to leave Minnesota on Thanksgiving weekend, getting away from the chilly November weather and lying on the beach sounded fantastic to me. I I guess we'd have to think about it. My mother shot me a nervous glance. I'd love to meet your parents. Teddy scratched his head. The thing is, I don't want to meet my I don't want you to meet my parents for the first time and have to introduce you as my girlfriend and her daughter. What do you mean? She asked. Teddy shifted in his chair and reached inside his pocket. Your other one, I whispered. Unsure of where that came from. He shoved his hand in his other pocket and pulled out a small black box. He nodded towards me as a thank you gesture while he pulled his brows together and in an expression that begged his question, how did you know? What I mean is that I'd rather introduce you as my future wife and my future stepdaughter. He hesitated for a moment before rising from his chair and bending down onto one knee beside my mother. My mom's hands flew to her mouth, and her eyes widened in surprise. How did she not see this coming? Teddy opened the box, and even under the soft glow of the restaurant lights, the familiar diamond I had seen in my mind shined with every facet. Their eyes locked in a lover's stare. Andrea May Frost, will you do the great pleasure of being my wife? A small sound escaped my mother's lips, although I wasn't sure if it was meant to be an answer. Teddy raised a pointer finger to stop her and placed the box beside her on the table. He reached into his pants pockets again and pulled out another small box and turned to me. When Teddy opened the box, tears welled up in my eyes. Inside the box sat a gorgeous pendant of an owl, its body outlined in blue and black gems. This was the most touching gesture. Now I understood how my mother didn't see this proposal coming. I had no idea Teddy was planning this for me either. And Crystal Ray Frost, I would be honored if you would give your mother and me the blessing that you wouldn't mind if I became your stepfather. He glanced toward my mom. That is, if your mother says yes. Was he trying to bribe me? Or was he just saying that I was just as important to him as my mom was? I wasn't sure. All I knew is that my heart swooned at this gesture. And that I loved Teddy to want him to marry my mother. And that I loved Teddy enough to want him to marry my mother. I hope she said yes. My mother's eyes were still wide, but she let her hands fall to her lap. Teddy, she glanced at me nervously. I think we need to talk about this. She looked around at the crowd who was beginning to stare and then back at the ring. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying it's a big step. And I think we should all talk about it privately. Teddy rose from his place on the floor. His shoulders slumped as he sat back in his seat. I completely understand, he said, although his fallen face told me this made him nervous. Let's just get the check, my mom insisted. I reached toward the middle of the table where my beautiful necklace sat. Box open, and snatched it up, closing it and placing it in my purse. I wanted to put it on immediately, but I couldn't predict how my mother would feel about that. If I could see the future, shouldn't I be able to tell? You have my blessing, I whispered, unsure if I had a place in the conversation. I gave Teddy a sympathetic look. When my mom wasn't watching, he raised the corners of his mouth in reply. Neither of us had to be psychic to share a telepathic conversation. Sorry about the way my mom answered, my expression said. I was expecting a yes, but there was still a glimmer of hope. Teddy's eyes replied. The car ride home was silent except for when Teddy asked if we could talk now. I'd like to speak to both of you separately, my mom answered. When Teddy pulled into the driveway, he hesitated when getting out of the car. Should I come in too? My mom climbed out of the passenger seat and looked back at him. Yes, please. Teddy hung his head as if Mom was mad at him, even though she clearly wasn't. I assured him of this when she was out of earshot, and he gave me another smile of thanks. My mother left Teddy in the living room and led me into her bedroom to talk. When the door clicked behind her, she let her emotions run. I want to marry him so badly. She danced about the room and plopped down onto the bed. Ugh, I don't know what to do. I stared at her. My mom and I got along great, like best friends, but I'd never seen her act so much like a teenage girl. Why didn't you say yes then? She stared back at me as if I just didn't get it. I really didn't understand. If she wanted to marry him, why did she crush his spirits in the restaurant? It's not that simple, Crystal. In marriage, you shouldn't hide anything. Hide anything? What are you hiding? I knew the answer before I finished the sentence. Teddy didn't know she was psychic. I love him so much, but before I can say yes, I need to make sure that he can live with my secret. I hate to put this responsibility on you, but I need you to help me figure out how to tell him. And that's the end of chapter 7. Kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger. Thank you so much for watching, and if you like this video, consider leaving a like and watching the next chapter. And if you would like to see me and my audiobook videos again, you can always subscribe. Thank you. Bye.